Well, for our business session today, I'm delighted to have three significant architects from significant international practices to talk about the subject of how one develops and nurtures talent within the office. And I think for the purposes of this discussion, we might talk about the effects of pandemics at the end of the session. But for the moment, let's assume reasonably normal times. And here to discuss this subject, we have Kim Herforth Nielsen, co-founder and principal of 3XN Architects, Jamie von Klemperer, president and design principal at Kohn, Pedersen, Fox, and Tracy Meller, a partner in Rogers, Stirk, Harbour and Partners. Hello to you all, and thank you for your time. And I thought we might start this session. I'll invite each of you in turn to say, what mentors did you have in your careers when you were young architects? Who looked after you? Who nurtured your talent? And as a result of that nurturing, did it mean that you stayed in an office longer than you might have done? Tracy, I'm going to kick off with you, if I may.
Absolutely. Hello, and thank you very much for having us here. It's funny you should ask the question that way, because that's exactly what happened to me. I worked through college. I needed to add to the income during college, so I worked through college. I did a year out when I came out in one of the recessions, and there was absolutely no work. I was very lucky to get a job at Farrell's. And at the time, it wasn't a practice that I felt I was necessarily aligned with, but it was a job, and I wanted to grab all the opportunities I could have. And I met Aidan Potter there, who was one of the design partners. And as a result of his guidance and mentoring, I stayed there for 2 year outs. I then worked through my diploma. I then came back after university. And I sort of knew in my heart of hearts it wasn't the right practice for me. But I was learning so much from that individual. And it was actually kind of with his support that I decided I needed to move on, which was the right decision for me. But absolutely the case of someone really helping me develop my thinking, even if it resulted in me leaving the practice he represented.
And can I ask whether that was the result of any sort of formal program within the Farrell office, or was it pretty much left to individuals who found common cause to kind of just pass on what advice and experience they had?
The latter. I think it was more good luck than anything else. I ended up working with Aidan quite early on in my time there, and we clicked, and he's a natural teacher. So I think that it was good luck. I mean, the nature of the practice at the time was very supportive of students, and gave us access to the model shop and all sorts once we were back at college. So the nature of the practice was nurturing, but it wasn't a formal program.
Thank you very much. Jamie, can I turn to you? The same question.
Yeah, I would say I lacked a mentor for the first 3-4 years of work out of school, and wondered whether I would continue to be an architect, because I found the first years of work incredibly stultifying in a number of ways. Back when we were drafting with parallel bars and plastic leads. But I joined KPF fairly early on, after about a year out, which is where I am today. And there was no formal program at all. It was kind of a fledgling firm. It wasn't so organized at that point. Probably still isn't today. But I did happen on a young partner in the firm named William Louis, who is himself very much of a craftsman, a taskmaster, sort of someone who didn't define himself in any channel of practice, more of a generalist and a sort of chief cook and bottle washer, did everything. And he took me through my paces. So it was sort of, for me, the great mentorship there was a strong and demanding character who exacted all manner of disciplines on the work, and became a friend and mentor to me, but not through any design or any planning or any formal structure, and not really anything I expected. but he's been all the way through, and he's just retired about a week ago. After I've been with him now for maybe close to 35 years in the firm.
Well, that's a lovely tribute. Kim, what was your experience?
Well, already from when I was in architect school, we actually formed a team, the three Nielsens, three extended 3 times Nielsen, and I thought I learned more from the other students actually than I did from the teachers, and we were dedicated to start up. I didn't start up right after the architect school. I went to CF Meller and Meller. He was sort of a mentor in how to do business, and he learned me all about how to do the business part of an office. But my mentors were more my colleagues, actually. I would say how we worked together and how we developed all the ideas, and that was quite exciting.
Well, that's an unusual one, because it's one way to bypass the problems of employment is to start your own practice as rapidly as possible. I'll stick with you, Kim, if I may, because my second question to each of you is, in normal years, how many young architects would you expect to join your practice? And how do you go about selecting them? How do you talent spot? Kim, you first.
Well, I think we get between 10 and 20, maybe more, every year. And the way that we attract them is to do good stuff ourselves, I think. That's first of all the foremost, you have to attract a young, talented architect to go and do good work. And then to respect them when they come in and use them on the long term, to involve them in the team. Everybody that comes in, more or less everybody that comes in, starts actually more or less right from the school. Most of them actually do. So they come in and participate in the competitions, and we do a lot of competitions. It's quite unusual, maybe from US, but here in Denmark we live from maybe 80-90% of our work is from architectural competitions. So we have a third of my company is actually doing competitions all the time. So these young architects, they come in and are part of these teams, and I think you have to involve them, and you have to get the best out of them, and that motivates them, and that creates a team spirit at the office.
And do you recruit them on the basis? I mean, do you advertise the fact that you're seeking, graduates to come and work at the firm, or do they approach you? I imagine many do, and you look at their portfolios. How do you pick that 10 to 20 each year?
That's a mixture. We are teaching or lecturing anyway, and we have contacts to architects schools around the world. But also we get a lot of approaches from architects all over the world, and we have a big portfolio to look into. And then we do interviews and take the best in, of course. And that's how it's being done. I think it's probably more than 20 when I think about it. It's maybe 30, 40 people we take in all of our countries.
And are they mainly Danish, or because you're working all over the world? It's a very international practice. What's the split between Danes and others?
We take more foreigners in the Danish, to be honest, because we work internationally. We have 90% or more of our work outside Denmark. So we try to take a mix in that reflects where we work. I think that's very important to have people from all over the world. And one of the reasons why we work abroad is because it's so exciting to work in all the different cultures. So we want to have the different cultures in the office as well. And we have that. So we have, I think, 20 different nationalities or more in the office. And then, as I say, most of them are, at the time being, maybe 60% are foreigners and 40% are Danish.
And if people stay with you for maybe a couple of years, do you expect the overseas people at some point all to come to Copenhagen to see head office?
Yeah, some of them. We have some turnarounds. So we have, for example, we have the office in Sydney, and we swap people. That people are going from here to Sydney, and people from Sydney to Copenhagen, and that is also important to get the DNA of the office to mix the different offices. And the way that we do things is always in collaboration. There's no office that only does their own stuff. We do it in collaboration with the main office that is here in Copenhagen all the time.
Thank you very much. Well, perhaps I can address the same question to you, Tracy. Quite a large office, not a gigantic office, but quite a substantial office here in London, not very far from the World Architecture Festival offices, on the edge of the city. How many people would you expect to take on it in a normal year? I'm going to exclude this very strange year for the purposes of this question.
I think we wish we could all exclude this strange year. Normally we would take probably 6 to 8 year-out students. So for those not in the UK, that's the gap between your part 1 and your part 2. And then generally 3 to 4 graduates, i.e. who have completed their part 2, their diploma.
Now imagine that you have hundreds of applications to come and work for the practice. Do you get an employment consultant to deal with the paperwork and weed out people who are really inappropriate, or do you guys do everything yourselves?
No, we do it ourselves, and in fact, slightly. I've been leading the recruitment team at the office for probably the best part of 15 years, and the team has grown and changed, and I spend slightly less time interviewing probably than I used to. But there's a group of 6 or 8 of us, and we sort of keep rotating it. We review the CVs, so there's an administrative role that logs them all. But we review them. We really enjoy it. We all sit in the meeting room, go through, pull them out, discuss them, share interesting stuff. And from that, we shortlist for interview. And then we interview quite widely. We probably interview 3 or 4 for each position we end up giving. And sometimes we keep going. If we don't think we've quite got there, we'll go back to the pile and keep pulling out and keep interviewing. And our interviews are there's always at least 2 of us who interview. And they're usually an hour or so. And we really try, and I think students are often quite intimidated coming to the office. I think they feel like they're a bit sort of overwhelmed by it. So we put quite a lot of time and effort into trying to really make them feel at ease, so we get to see the best of them. And that does take time. So we do quite long interviews, get them to talk about their work, but also, their wider aspirations, their backgrounds, their education, to really try and get a feel, because it is obviously largely portfolio, but for us it's also very important that it's a fit and potential as well.
And do you have an explicit diversity agenda when you're doing that recruiting, or is it essentially just getting the best talents and let the diversity fall where it may?
I'd say we don't have a diversity criteria, as in we don't have quotas. We have a diversity awareness. So we will definitely make sure that in our sort of shortlist for interview, we've got a diverse range. And if it keeps coming back that it looks like, say for a year out, for example, say you're continuously getting the majority being male, because we do get more male applicants than female applicants, and we get less BAME applicants than we'd like. So sometimes we will keep interviewing and saying, oh, hang on, let's go back through the pile, let's look again, and try and really create opportunity that way. Then we will ultimately take the people that we think are right, but we will keep trying to broaden the net to find those people in a diverse way.
And it's quite an international office. I mean, you've got a lot of nationalities there.
It is. It's a very international office. It's wonderful. I feel utterly humbled by the amount of languages you hear spoken in our little cafe. I think the British are so bad generally at not speaking languages, but we have a lot of Europeans, many of whom speak 3, 4, 5 more languages, lot of Spanish. We had an office in Madrid for a long time, and so we have a presence and an awareness there. Plus, the Spanish architectural education is amazing, incredibly thorough, and so we tend to get a lot of focus on construction, and so there's a sort of a natural fit. Similarly, French, we've done a lot of work in France, and we get a lot of French applicants. So yeah, we are definitely very European. Occasionally, also Australia. We've had an office there for a while, but it's primarily Europeans.
Thank you very much. Jamie, can I turn to you? A very big office, New York based, but with offices across the world. I imagine you're quite a significant employer of new architectural talent. And how do you go about the process of picking the people that are right for you?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I would say we hire about 40 to 50 young architects per year, and that doesn't include summer interns. We have a nice influx of 30, 40 people from area schools, both in London, in New York, and a little in Shanghai too. So that creates another kind of dynamic. But the bringing people to the firm happens in a fairly decentralized way because the candidates and the needs and the people in London, New York, Shanghai, Hong Kong, quite different. But we try to make it as personal as possible, which of course makes sense. It's bringing people to dedicate their lives to something that we need to share some sort of a point of view about, some sense of mission. So a little bit analogous to what Kim was mentioning, we have 2 or 3 different partners, directors involved in hiring of any individual, and that becomes a conversation, of course, the review of the portfolio to look for something daring, a bit innovative, and personally invested, as one would want to see in any portfolio, for the sake of hiring somebody. But we make sure that there is a designer, because in projects that are quite large, there are those in our firm who operate more on the management side. But it's very important to us that no matter who's being hired, that the design component is represented strongly from our side. And often we try to find a sort of a fit between those who are interviewing and the project which the individual will go on to when she or he come to the office. So I suppose that's kind of efficient, because then we sort of know what we're doing once we've made the hire. But it also creates a little bit of a immediate bond between a senior member of the firm and usually a young employee. We don't generally hire but out of school. In other words, we don't hire people with years and years of experience. We tend to be a homegrown office. But I think that sort of link of purpose between why you would like to come to the firm, or we would love to have you join, and what project are you going to be working on, what stage is it at, and where is it, and is it urban design, or is it a refit of a lobby, an entry hall, or is it an airport or educational institution? So those kinds of matches, I think, are we're very fortunate when we can make those, and we try as much as possible to make that happen.
That's really interesting. I want to stick with you, Jamie, if I may, because I want to move on to a question of what you do, either formally or informally, to try to retain talented staff, particularly those that you've recruited who are fairly young, that clearly are going to have a future in the profession. Are there things that you do other than salary increases, because everybody, of course, does salary increases in reasonable time, but are there any particular things that you do to sort of nurture careers and keep people on board with the ethos of the firm and the success of the firm?
Yeah, I think that's always, in a way, job number one, since we're all teaching each other and teaching our staff all the way through. And usually things go well, but we notice, as everybody does, when somebody important to us, valuable to us, someone we love to work with, leaves the firm, we sort of rack our brains to ask, why did that happen? Or what did we do wrong? And I'd say, so the factors that we think about, one of the most important has to do with the continuity of the individual's time on a project. In other words, if a young architect can come and know that she or he is going to be working from the first day or their first day, but often early stages of scratching the paper to come up with ideas for the project, to the end of the project, to doing the site work, etc., then it's a great recipe and formula for satisfaction and fulfillment. Yeah, being sort of recognized, honored, and respected. After all, architects don't expect to be paid as much as bankers, but it's the experience and the sort of involvement and the inclusion that I think matters to a young architect. So I think that's terribly important. Also, I was going to mention our work is diverse geographically, maybe 35% of it within the United States. So the phenomenon of join the architecture firm and see the world is not uncommon in our younger staff or any of our staff. So we try to mix up the experience of the young architect from year to year to year to give a variety of exposures to different cultures of the site and the project and client, different building types, etc. So stirring the pot, so to speak, and allowing for the firm to be a little bit like a university for the young architect, to be able to sample the way one does take different courses in the American liberal arts institution, educational institution, is a nice formula. And also having lots of activities of lecturing and teaching and seminars with younger staff participating within the firm. And that's been hugely important now, of course, in the COVID period, where it's the only way we can keep in touch.
Thank you very much. Tracy, how about you? I mean, famously, the Stirk and the Harbour of the practice, Graham Stirk and Ivan Harbour, were recruited at a very young age and were made directors at a very young age also. So there was a sort of there was precedent there for this very, very long-lasting nurturing culture. How do you do it now?
Yeah, it's true. We don't have a high rate of natural attrition of people leaving us. And so really, partly for us, if we're not going to continually expand, it's creating the opportunities for people to grow in the practice. And I would definitely agree that the continuity on a project is a big part of that. I think we all learn our most when we go all the way through the process, go back to the beginning again, and the construction phase informs that first thinking. It's getting harder and harder to provide that for people because our involvement doesn't always go through to the end of projects anymore. And a lot of projects are stop-start. So we end up having to move people around to try and give them experience at different scales, different project stages, to try and build that wider experience. So it takes quite a lot of active intervention to try and make sure that they do keep learning and keep developing and not get pigeonholed, because often if someone is extremely good at something, it's easy to keep going back to them to do that thing again. And we've been trying to address that by getting those people to then teach others the skill set they have, mentor others, which enables them to move on and do something different, but isn't leaving a gap. And that's worked quite nicely with helping share experience across the office. But, sometimes it's good for people to leave. And there's a whole host of small practices and even not small practices now, quite established practices, set up by people who have left us. And we tend to try and keep relationships with those people. And often if we get work, in the heydays of having more work than we knew what to do with, I dream of those now. If we had projects that we felt were better suited to a smaller practice, we'd often pass those on to practices that have been formed from people leaving us. So sometimes it's a good thing.
Thank you very much. And Kim, how do you handle these matters? How do you keep the talent?
I think our office might be different from KPF in that way that as I said, get most of our work via competitions, and we have a fairly big competition team. So when you come in as a young architect, you start there normally, and if we should win around 30% of our competitions, and if we win a competition, some of the team continues on the project afterwards, and others go to another competition. So if you're part of the competition team, you get a lot of different works during 1 year, not continuously for 5 years or 3 years or whatever, or 2 years, whatever, in one project. Then you're getting to know a lot of different project types and whatever. And I think that can be interesting for people as well, and I reckon they like that as well. And at the same time, we try to educate our people all the time, so we pay for their courses and all different kinds of disciplines, BIM and whatever, and we take them on study trips every year. The teams go on study trips around the world. So that's a part of their education as well, part of nurturing them as well. So we look very much into the individual education of development of the people in that sense. And some, of course, start from the start of the project and to the end of the project. I must say most of the people actually, as they start up in the competition department, will be part of new things happening all the time. Personally, I think that's very exciting. I'm very much involved in the competitions, and I like to have new challenges all the time, and new things to do. I like this speed that's on it, and I like the challenge with the innovation that has to be on it all the time. And I think that's actually why people come to us, is to be part of that as well.
Now, I'd like to turn to, and I'll stick with you, Kim, just for the moment, because I would like to turn to what you've managed to do, or what you've tried to do in this very unusual year with so many people not working in the office anymore. Describe how you've tried to keep morale up and team spirit, and what's it been possible to do to enthuse staff who may be nervous about the future, nervous about employment, nervous about work coming in. How can you promote positives? Let's stick with you on this one, Kim.
Yeah, we started when we run into the COVID period crisis there in March. We were also nervous, but it actually ended up better than we expected. Not with the COVID, but with the work-wise. So we have had a better year than we expected this year here as well. We started quite early to send people home to work remotely, but that was only for a shorter time, 4 or 6 weeks, I think. Then we started pulling people back to the office again, and right now we actually, and for a longer period, we have been sitting at the office. We have had it under control. We actually right now sending half of our staff back to work remotely again, because the numbers are going up. And before Christmas, we hope that after Christmas we can be all here again. So they have been part of the office, and everybody has been working together and had this great spirit. We have had a lot of success this year, I must say, with more wins than usually. And that's, of course, a thing to think about. When we're not traveling so much, then we concentrate more and we have a better outcome. But that again makes people happy about what they're doing, because they can see something positive comes out of it. So that keeps the spirit up. I think right now the spirit is really high, except from the COVID. That's never going to be fun. Hopefully the vaccine comes here after Christmas. Yeah.
And do you think the world of endless meetings, especially internationally, is going to change fundamentally as a result of COVID? Or do you think that once we are all vaccinated, it will be business as usual?
I think it will change for sure. For example, in your own country, in London, we won a competition for British land just before the COVID period came, and our client asked us to start an office in London. Then the COVID period came, and we couldn't be all the people that we wanted to be over there anyway. So we had to do things remote, and we had to have the meetings remotely as well, as Teams or Zoom meetings. And soon after that, we realized, and the client realized, that we can actually have a lot more meetings, to be a lot more present together with the client via these video sessions. So that will work on after this crisis here as well. I think my personal travel will probably decrease to only half of it in the future, because we can now have meetings remotely a lot more, and everybody knows about it than we had before. So I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing for us, and it's a good thing for the world, sustainable as well.
Thank you very much. Tracy, what have you guys been up to? Mainly working from home, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we did. We managed to get people back in sort of from September. Initially, when we also shut down quite early, slightly ahead of the national lockdown, and moved everyone remote. And it worked better than we thought, but there's no doubt that fatigue sets in quite quickly. And we tried to do things like, office meetings, office presentations, mini talks, quiz nights. We really try to sort of keep the morale going. And I think inevitably over time, the numbers dropped and the sort of fatigue set in. In September, we made a real push to try and get people who felt comfortable back in. We sort of reorganized the office, red team, blue team, different days for different projects. And we'd started to get some traction, and really, it was wonderful to have people back in the office. And as much as you can do it remotely, it's so much better coming together. But of course, then we had the second lockdown. So those numbers have dropped off, and now we're in the run into Christmas. We're very hopeful in the new year we'll really start to get the teams back in the office, even if it's 50-50, and get that, what we all miss by coming together, which is not the solving the problem necessarily, it's the wider influences, the wider conversations that I think enrich all of our working experiences. And we're definitely missing that without a shadow of a doubt.
Thank you very much. And Jamie, how are things in NYC and indeed in your international offices? Because I imagine it'd be very different in Shanghai to what it is in the States.
Right. So yeah, that's been sort of an interesting experience in comparing cultures, comparing governmental restrictions or guidance about how we have to handle this. Completely different, of course, in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Seoul, Singapore, from New York, London. But in the New York office and London, not so different. But in New York, we've been out for 8 months, solid. We've opened our office to anybody who wants to come, but out of 450 people who normally inhabit the New York office, we have maybe 4, 3 every day. So it's been totally voluntary. I think health is first. You know, New York was particularly badly hurt. The hospitals were full. The ICUs were overflowing. It was a real horror scene back in March. And I think it became an article of faith that we're not going to go back to work until we need to, and we don't need to now. So my feeling is that the art, the craft, the profession of architecture is particularly well suited to this remote practice. You know, it's unfortunate. We'd love to be together, but we were seized with moments of panic in the beginning about how we could actually put together really complex sets of drawings for buildings that, you know, take years to produce. How could we begin to do that without seeing each other? But I think because all of our disciplines involve spatial parameters, dimensions, materials, drawings, things that we can all talk about and put on screen together, I think as not KPF, but as a larger group of professionals and tradespeople, we can handle this separation very, very well. So I would say it's hard to know the metric. You know, how do you compare the work from pre and during COVID? But I would say the quality of work is very high. The level of inspiration in the work as well as the completeness of the work. Communication with clients always now a very, very big issue. But I'd say around the world, everybody's risen to the occasion. There's a kind of a world spirit of we're going to get through this. And that's been very positive influence on so much of what we do. So yes, we'd love to get back, but we're not rushing back to the office anytime soon, because I think none of us expect the vaccines to really have a broad effect until June, July.
Thank you very much for that. And a kind of positive note on which to bring this session to a close. My takeaway from this is firstly that in terms of both recruiting and nurturing talent, that it's very much a business for the leaders of the practice rather than HR departments, that you're looking for people with design talent, and the people interviewing and nurturing are always going to have an element of design at the forefront. And I think the consequences of these approaches, which are not identical, but I think have things in common, are clearly that you're all examples of successful practices that are doing more than surviving in this awful year. So Kim, Jamie and Tracy, thank you very much for your time today, and good luck for the new year and better times ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.